It begins not with a sound, but with a specific type of silence that precedes an observation. Someone is looking at you. The gaze is not hostile. In fact, it is warm, perhaps even admiring. They open their mouth to speak, and before the sentence is even halfway finished, your body initiates a rejection sequence usually reserved for physical threats. You hear the words. They are positive. They describe something you did well, a quality you possess, or a contribution you made. Logically, you understand that this is meant to be a pleasant exchange, a social currency of connection. But somatically, the experience is inverted. Instead of expansion, there is a sharp, involuntary contraction in the chest. Your breath catches, just for a fraction of a second, high in the throat. The skin tightens. It feels less like a gift and more like a sudden, blinding spotlight has been turned on in a dark room where you were trying to remain invisible. The data they are presenting does not match the internal schematic you hold of yourself, causing a violent system error. Your reflex is immediate and surgical. You must neutralize the energy before it settles. You might laugh it off, turning the moment into a joke to break the tension. You might list all the reasons why the success was accidental, the result of luck, or due to someone else's effort. You dismantle the statement piece by piece until it is small enough to not threaten your internal equilibrium. You look at their face and see confusion. They intended to hand you something valuable, and you are treating it like a live grenade that needs to be tossed back. You smile, but the smile does not reach the nervous system. You are simply calculating the hidden cost of this interaction, wondering why a moment of validation feels so strikingly similar to an impending indictment. To the external observer, this rapid-fire deflection is almost always misdiagnosed. The world views your behavior through the lens of social etiquette, stripping it of its visceral urgency and recategorizing it as a personality trait. Most often, they label it modesty. They praise you for being humble, unaware that true humility is a state of internal peace, whereas what you are experiencing is a state of high alert defense. When you frantically divert the credit to the team, to timing, or to luck, the room nods approvingly. They see a virtuous character, someone who refuses to elevate themselves above the collective. They reward the deflection, reinforcing the very behavior that keeps you isolated. However, if the rejection is too sharp, or if it disrupts the flow of conversation too jarringly, the interpretation shifts to something more cynical. They suspect you are fishing. They believe the denial is a performative act, a calculated hesitation designed to force them to double down. They imagine you are playing a game of social leverage, manipulating the dynamic to extract a second, louder repetition of the praise. They interpret your visible discomfort not as pain, but as a hunger for validation that can only be sated by excessive reassurance. They read the situation as a transaction where you are negotiating for a higher price. They cannot see the physiological reality occurring beneath the skin. They do not register that for your nervous system, visibility is equated with vulnerability. They assume you are managing your image, when in reality, you are managing a threat response. This disconnect creates a distinct, suffocating form of isolation. You are surrounded by people who believe they are feeding you, yet you remain starving because the nourishment they offer is perceived by your system as a toxin. They continue to pour water into a cup that is capped with a lid of terror. They smile, thinking they have connected, unaware that every attempt to elevate you only forces you to dig the trench deeper, expending vital energy just to remain at zero. This deflection is not a passive habit. It is an active, metabolically expensive labor. Consider the sheer caloric burn required to constantly monitor the perimeter of your self-perception, ensuring no inflated expectation breaches the wall. You are not merely conversing. You are engaged in continuous, low-grade reputation management, but in reverse. You are working tirelessly to lower the stock value of your own identity so that no one buys in too heavily. Every positive remark creates a spike in internal pressure because it threatens to establish a new standard, If you accept the compliment today, you implicitly agree to sustain that level of performance tomorrow. The praise feels less like a reward and more like a debt being signed in your name without your consent. You accumulate accolades that pile up at your doorstep, but you never open the door to let them in. You remain starved for worthiness while surrounded by evidence of your worth. This depletion is not a random byproduct of insecurity, nor is it a simple lack of self-esteem. It is the calculated overhead of a survival system designed to keep you safe by keeping you small, ensuring that no one, especially not you, ever expects too much. To understand this rejection, we must abandon the comforting idea that the human brain desires happiness. The brain does not prioritize happiness, it prioritizes certainty. It is a prediction engine designed to navigate the world by creating a stable internal model of reality. When external events match your internal model, you feel calm. When they contradict it, you experience prediction error, a state of neural alarm that demands immediate resolution. This is the mechanical underpinning of your discomfort. You possess a solidified internal schematic that defines you as insufficient, flawed, or lucky to be here. This is your baseline, your homeostatic set point. When someone offers you a compliment, they are presenting data that violently conflicts with this baseline. They are telling you that you are competent, valuable, or impressive. While your conscious mind might desire this validation, your subconscious processing center flags it as a system anomaly. It registers as a lie. Psychologically, this triggers a state of acute cognitive dissonance. The tension is not merely intellectual, it is physiological. Neuroimaging studies suggest that social disconnection and threats to self-concept activate regions in the brain, such as the anterior cingulate cortex, the same area that processes physical pain. To your brain, the gap between who I think I am and who they say I am is a structural breach. To resolve this pain, the brain has two options. It can rewrite the entire architecture of your self-identity to accommodate the new positive data, a metabolically expensive and slow process, or it can simply reject the incoming data to preserve the existing model. You reject the compliment because it is the path of least resistance. It is energetically cheaper to deny the praise than to dismantle the belief system you have lived in for decades. You are not suffering from an inability to hear, you are suffering from an intolerance to inconsistency. You are effectively gaslighting yourself to maintain a coherent, albeit painful, narrative. You prioritize being right about your own inadequacy over being happy about your success, because to the primitive brain, a known hell is always safer than an unknown heaven. But this mechanical explanation leaves a ghost in the machine. If the brain's primary directive is survival, and if social bonding and status increase survival odds in almost every mammalian hierarchy, why does your specific system identify positive reinforcement as the threat? What specific history wrote the code that makes being valued feel like being hunted? This phenomenon is not a defect in your social software. It is a highly specialized, functioning security protocol. You have likely spent years categorizing this behavior as shyness, imposter syndrome, or insecurity. You view it as a weakness, a hollow spot in your character where confidence should be. But this is not a deficiency of character. It is a surplus of prediction. This is not humility. It is preemptive damage control. When you deflect praise, you are not engaging in a moral act of modesty. You are engaging in a strategic act of expectation management. Your nervous system has learned that the moment you accept a label of competence, you lose the safety of the shadows. You become a target for future scrutiny. If you agree that you are brilliant today, you have just signed a binding contract to be brilliant tomorrow, next week, and next year. That contract feels terrifying because your internal model predicts that your resources are finite and your luck is about to run out. Therefore, the rejection is a tactical maneuver. You are artificially lowering the market value of your own stock to prevent a crash. You are negotiating for a life of lower expectations because low expectations yield high safety. You are willing to forego the dopamine of validation to avoid the cortisol of performance pressure. You are not a person who hates themselves. You are a person who has calculated that the price of admission to the world of success is too high to pay. You have built a cage of mediocrity, locked yourself inside, and handed the key to the world, solely because the cage is the only place where you can breathe without the crushing weight of having to prove you deserve to be there. The architecture of this defense mechanism is fractal. It does not stop at the boundary of a conversation. Once the nervous system learns that receiving is dangerous because it creates an unpayable debt of expectation, this logic bleeds into every vertical of your existence. You begin to see the refusal of the good, not just as a social quirk, but as a necessary survival strategy applied to career, intimacy, and even simple pleasure. Consider your professional life. You are likely the backbone of your team, reliable, highly competent, and consistently over-delivering. Yet, when the opportunity for a significant promotion arises, one that would place you in a position of high visibility and leadership, you hesitate. You might decline it, citing a desire for work-life balance, or you might sabotage the interview with subtle self-deprecation. On the surface, you tell yourself you don't want the stress, but the deeper mechanism is the avoidance of the spotlight. To remain a high-performing subordinate is safe. You are the engine, hidden under the hood, essential but unseen. To become the leader is to become the paint job, visible and liable for every scratch. You choose to remain overqualified and underpaid, paying a literal financial tax to purchase the luxury of invisibility. You maintain a career ceiling, not because you lack the skill to break through it, but because you lack the nervous system capacity to tolerate the gaze that comes with the height. This pattern metastasizes violently into your romantic life. You may find yourself inexplicably drawn to partners who are emotionally unavailable, critical, or inconsistent. When you are with them, you feel anxious, yes, but you also feel a strange, perverse sense of orientation. You know where you stand. You are the one striving, the one proving, the one earning. This dynamic, while painful, aligns perfectly with your internal model that worthiness must be constantly purchased. Contrast this with what happens when you meet someone who is genuinely kind, available, and complimentary. A partner who gives love freely, without making you work for it. You do not feel relief, you feel revulsion. You might label them boring, cloying, or too much. You might pick fights over trivialities to create distance. Why? Because their unconditional acceptance strips you of your primary defense mechanism, the hustle. If they already love you, you cannot earn it. If you cannot earn it, you have no control over it. And if you have no control, you are vulnerable to the terrifying possibility that they might see the real you, the one you believe is flawed, and leave. So, you reject the healthy love to return to the familiar hunger. Because hunger has a predictable trajectory, whereas satisfaction feels like waiting for a trap to snap shut. It even infiltrates your ability to experience basic joy. Brené Brown calls this foreboding joy, but mechanistically, it is a regulation failure. Picture a moment of perfect peace, a quiet morning, a victory at work, a laugh with friends. Immediately, your brain interjects with a catastrophic thought. You imagine a car accident. You remember a pending deadline. You worry about a family member's health. You cannot simply be in the good moment. You must contaminate it with worry to insulate yourself from the potential pain of losing it. You are emotionally hedging your bets. You believe that if you soften into the joy, you will be blindsided by tragedy. So, you stay rigid, keeping one foot in the disaster scenario, never fully inhabiting your life. You live in a state of permanent rehearsal for a tragedy that hasn't happened, ensuring that you never get caught off guard, but also ensuring that you never truly arrive. You have constructed a life that is technically functional, but experientially hollow. You deflect the compliment, you decline the promotion, you push away the partner, you poison the joy. In every instance, the logic is identical. Reject the input to lower the stakes. You are safe, you are prepared, you are in control. But you are beginning to notice the texture of this safety. It is cold, it is static, and it is starting to look less like a fortress and more like a mausoleum. You have successfully protected yourself from the pain of failure, but in doing so, you have hermetically sealed yourself off from the nourishment of success. You are repeating the same defensive loop over and over, protecting a version of yourself that no longer exists from a threat that is no longer real. The tragedy of this mechanism is not that it fails to work. The tragedy is that it works too well. By systematically rejecting positive feedback, you successfully maintain homeostasis. You keep your expectations low, your visibility manageable, and your risk of disappointment effectively at zero. But in biology, a system that stops exchanging energy with its environment is not stable. It is dying. Systems that prioritize safety over adaptation do not merely stagnate, they atrophy. You are engaging in a form of specific, chronic psychological malnutrition. Just as the body requires protein to repair muscle tissue after exertion, the psyche requires accurate, positive external feedback to repair and update the self-concept. When you deflect a compliment, you are not simply performing a social ritual, you are discarding the raw material needed to build resilience. Without this fresh external data, your internal model of self relies entirely on old, corrupted files, memories of past failures, echoes of early critics, and the distortion of your own anxiety. You are starving yourself of the very nutrients required to update your software, remaining trapped in a version of yourself from 10 years ago, a version that was weaker, less capable, and more vulnerable. You are operating a high-performance machine using an obsolete manual. Over time, this creates a distortion field that alters your external reality. The people in your life, friends, partners, colleagues, eventually stop trying. The human brain is an efficiency machine. If every time someone attempts to hand you a gift, you slap it out of their hands or treat it like an insult, they will eventually stop bringing gifts. The compliments cease, not because you are no longer worthy, but because you have made the transaction too emotionally expensive for the giver. You have unknowingly trained your environment to treat you with the same neglect you treat yourself. The silence you secretly feared, the confirmation that you are not special, becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy engineered by your own defense grid. The ultimate cost is not just loneliness. It is a profound estrangement from your own capability. You move through life executing tasks with high competence, yet you feel like a persistent fraud because you have systematically deleted the evidence of your success. You possess the skills of a master, but you retain the nervous system of a novice. You are walking through life with a bank account full of millions, forcing yourself to sleep on the street because you refuse to check the balance. You have purchased safety, yes, but the currency you used was your own reality. You have successfully avoided the pain of being seen, but you have also forfeited the only mechanism that allows a human being to feel real. There is no summary. There is no checklist of 5 things to do tomorrow morning to fix this. To offer you a solution would be to insult the intelligence of the mechanism you have built. You cannot simply decide to stop a reflex that has kept you safe for decades, any more than you can decide to stop your heart from beating when you are frightened. Instead, you are left with a quiet, uncomfortable question that must be held, not answered. If the compliment is not a lie, and if the person offering it is not a fool, and if the success you have achieved is objectively real, then who is the person that is experiencing this terror? You are living inside a house that you outgrew 10 years ago. You are guarding a treasure, your own competence, that you are terrified to acknowledge exists. The next time the praise comes, the next time the spotlight swings toward you, you will feel the contraction. You will feel the urge to deflect, to joke, to hide. That flinch is not the truth. It is just the memory of a time when it wasn't safe to be seen. But you are not there anymore. The lock is still on the door, but you are the one holding the key. The question is not whether you are good enough. The question is whether you are brave enough to let yourself know it.